Harvey, you in a hurry, Ben? You in a big hurry? Yeah. Okay. We'll have the majority leader first with his bill, House Bill 3. If you're going to come on over, yes. I think I'm duty bound to say one thing, and that is what we are presently going by, and this is a resolution 523, which was sponsored by me and Mr. Keene and Mr. Likely, who has passed on, Mr. Freeman, who's no longer in our committee, and Mr. Thomas and others. And this is the one where we had an urging resolution passed the House urging Superintendent Kathy Cox to urge all local school systems in Georgia to honor Veterans Day and for other purposes. And we use the example of what we do down in my area, which is we have a Voice of Veterans. We go around the schools and teach them about Veterans Day. And I've heard from several school systems that said that they are doing that, and I didn't have any adverse things on that. I think I had 2 letters from veterans, and I think one of them is here today, and will be wanting to speak. So with that, Mr. Majority Leader, we'll let you present your bill.
Was not voted on in the Senate at all. It just says this, that it recognizes Veterans Day as a school holiday. The chairman is correct. There are some school systems in the state who elect, including my own school district, to observe Veterans Day as a school holiday. However, they are by far the exception. Only about 15%, 10 to 15% of the school systems close for Veterans Day. Certainly in my area, 2 of our leading veteran council members are here, but we have a large parade. I have a picture here, which I'd like to pass around with the chairman's permission. That was at the conclusion of our Veterans Day of parade last year with 4 of my grandkids who were there. They look forward to it. They walk in the parade with me. They go to our ceremony down by the flagpole at the casino. And it is a special day in our area, in our county, where we draw and try to bring families and children there to see the men and women who have served. And I know Representative Glenn, you're well aware of that. That's all the bill does. That is all the bill does. And I'll answer any questions, but the closing comment I would have is that we currently, all the national holidays we close schools for, Labor Day, Columbus Day, Thanksgiving Day, couple weeks for Christmas, winter holidays, Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, spring break, Memorial Day. It is already a national holiday. Veterans Day is a national holiday. Our mail's closed, banks are closed, most offices, businesses, all government agencies are closed. But it's, to my knowledge, the only national holiday that our schools don't close for. And in this day and age, with so many new veterans, I think it's appropriate that we allow them to participate locally that day for those ceremonies. And I know, Chairman Yates, you've been very gracious, certainly to me. I know you are active in schools in your area as we are, those programs, and I don't see this as interfering. You can still go into the schools and have programs during the week before, the day before, after, but it will allow those students to attend those ceremonies. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I just ask the committee's favorable consideration on House Bill 3.
Well, I know you got to go to another meeting. If you're welcome to stay here, of course, while we're going to have some other speakers that I understand want to speak on it, and then we'll have some things to say up here. You can do whatever you wish on it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Please excuse me. Sally Fox, who serves as my chief of staff, is going to remain, and I don't know that I can explain anything else about the bill, but thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the hearing. I've got to go to this other meeting, and I want to thank Mike Browning and Nick Hart, who are 2 good friends and great representatives of veterans groups around the state, for coming up today, and hope you'll allow them the opportunity to comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. hectic times. One gentleman's leaving and another one's coming here, and another one's coming. That's good. We got. We can go ahead and, if it's all right with everybody, we'll have these speakers. I think Brother Browning wants to speak, and I don't know who, and the major there, Major Hart. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I didn't want to downgrade you. I should have made you feel good and called you General. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. All right. Go ahead,
Chairman
sir.
Yates, I am Mike Browning, and I am the immediate past chairman of the Veterans Council, and we have taken the lead in trying to get this bill through. Started some years ago with it. Looked like we got a pretty good bit done last year until they hit a brick wall. And I would like to say, you're talking about General Hart, he did have one general in his family, his father. And he's a fine man from a fine family.
Okay.
Back to the bill. Some years ago, we went to the local school board and asked them to make Veterans Day a holiday, and they did.
What local board is that?
Glenn County. Glenn County.
Okay.
Pardon me.
Yeah. Okay.
To Glenn County School Board, and they did make it a holiday. Well, one or two school boards later, they decided they didn't need that as a holiday. They wanted it for something else, so they took it away. Well, we marched back down there, and we talked to that school board, and they said, yeah, it should be a holiday, so they made it a holiday. Well, one or two school boards later came in, and they said, well, we don't think we need this as a holiday, so they took it away. So we go back down there, and I'll be honest with you, as a veteran, you wonder why other holidays aren't being picked on. Not that you want any holiday done away with, but you really wonder what is wrong with our culture in this country, and especially here in Georgia, when the veterans are treated that way. I think if we had one good news person out there writing these stories about what's going on, people would get up in arms over it. But the last go-around, we got it put back in. Since then, a new school superintendent came into Glenn County and called me into his chambers and told me about this big plan to have veterans come into the schools on Veterans Day. I said, well, we already come into schools. Years before you ever showed up here, we've been going into the schools during the week of Veterans Day, or during the week of Veterans Day, and we do a great job of that. I said, and whenever the day is all for Veterans Day, we have a huge celebration. Jerry King comes to it every year, and other elected officials. Pete Wheeler came 2 years ago and got the Veteran of the Century Award from our council and all the other groups that support us. And it is a huge event. We have a big turnout for it. We have built this over many, many years. We have done a lot of work to get it this way. But the most inspiring thing for me, and I'm always up at the podium just for... not that I necessarily want to, but I've been the chairman for 7 years of the council. The pay's great. It's nothing. But when I'm up there and I see the veterans that come in to this ceremony area, and a lot of World War II veterans like yourself, some of them can still get into uniforms, proudest bunch of people I've ever seen in my life. And I wouldn't take it away from them for nothing. One day they get honored. One day. But they come out, and we recognize them. They get to stand. It's just an hour. But they love it. They love it because they never forget what they have done for their country. And that's why we're here. We want our kids to go to these ceremonies. We don't want it to be a choice that the veterans have to make. We know all communities don't have Veterans Day events. We know that. But the communities that do, veterans shouldn't have to choose between going to the school and talking to the kids, which we love to do, or going to an event where I can sit there and kind of have the limelight on me just one day out of the year. And I'll be honest with you, it's not about me. Colonel Hart to tell you, I work them. I'm working that day. I'm help pulling this thing off, and I'm privileged to get to do it for the other veterans, and I'll continue. But we would like some very heartfelt consideration about an event that we think does not add to the cost of the school budget. And in fact, the last time they wanted to do away with Veterans Day in Glenn County, the reason was that they wanted to make the voting day, the general election day, a holiday. They didn't have a problem with having a holiday. They just wanted to make voting day a holiday, and we let the kids out of school, but they can be in school on Veterans Day. And everything to us is just out of sync. It's just out of sync. And we would appreciate your consideration for what we've been asking for the last few years. And we thank you, and we thank all your committee members.
Would you answer a few questions?
Any questions?
Yes.
He answered my question. I'll waive, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Glanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony here today. I support what we're trying to do, and I do spend quite a bit of time in the schools doing Veterans Day, and I've spoken at Veterans Day parades as the keynote for several years, so I understand what it is. But one of the things I noticed is when I go to these Veterans Days programs, and I do speak, and I hope it's not because I'm the speaker, but we don't have the kind of participation that I would like to see. So the question is, how does giving the students a day out of school translate to more participation on a day that's already a holiday for our veterans?
Well, I wrote a letter to the chairman, and my thinking is that you have to have a culture to drive anything going on. And if you want to drive patriotism, okay, that's what we're probably talking about here. And appreciation for your veterans. And there's all things you can be patriotic about. But if you want to inculcate patriotism in our students so that when they're out of school that one day and so that they will go to these events, we have to start educating our kids, not just on Veterans Day, not showing up and educating these kids that day, but I suggest you get the VFW. If you remember the VFW, or maybe the American Legion, they put out a calendar. Look on their calendar that they put out. There are key dates throughout the year. It may have been the Battle of Hamburger Hill, okay? It may have been VE Day. But I'd suggest that we get veterans to go in. It may have been the Battle of the Bulge when it was going on, some key date about that. But I suggest that the schools, we encourage the schools to invite veterans to come in throughout the year on these key historic dates that tell something about what our military establishment has done for this country. To get those in there throughout the year. And you know, I think in a few years, and maybe have these kids start writing little essays. What does this event mean to you? And have some veterans come in and talk about it that were connected to that, or supposed to connect to it. And I think in a few years we'll change that culture, and when Veterans Day rolls around, they are going to appreciate what veterans have done. That's the only way I see to do it. To answer your question, I don't know if it answers your question, but we're not. I'll say this: how many kids go to Memorial Day? It's a national holiday or national observance. How many kids go to that if their school's in session? Probably not a whole lot, but we don't do away with the holiday. How many kids really go to the Martin Luther King observance? Okay, most of them, except when in some larger cities, you can see a bigger turnout at a parade. And in Brunswick, we have a pretty good turnout, but the majority of the kids don't go to it.
Follow up, Mr.
Was he first before this one?
I have follow up.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and not to be argumentative, because we're all trying to get to the same place.
Yeah.
But we already have the holiday, so this is not about taking away the Veterans Day observance. This is not about taking away the Veterans Day observance. In my mind, to promote the kind of culture that you're talking about, wouldn't it be more relevant that we flood those schools during the Veterans Day week and promote exactly what you're saying to build that mindset and that culture so that it translates to the participation on Veterans Day. What I don't want to see is just another day that folk get out of school and has no relationship to what we're trying to do.
Yes, sir. I understand that, and I would say that I can't promise you that there's any great numbers of kids, or if this committee passes this thing on to the floor and it gets to the House and the Senate, that they're going to start going to these ceremonies around the state. They probably won't. I mean, but I'd still like to see it passed because there's no other holiday. There's no other holiday that you would. And it's not just about saying, well, I'm a veteran, so this holiday ought to get it because some other group or some other person. But name me another holiday that is observed now that you would say asked to do the same thing, that you would take off the school calendar rather than have that as a holiday, and ask that anybody that has some kind of connection to speaking on that holiday go to the school and talk to the kids. Name me another. Would you do it on Martin Luther King Jr. Day? Would you do away with that holiday and let's say that we have our kids go? I mean, our community leaders go into the school and talk about all the good that this man did for this country. And
Well, first of all, sir, all due respect, you would have to assume that I promoted or supported the Martin Luther King holiday, which you don't. So, but irrespective of that, we're not talking about taking away a holiday. You observe the holiday in your community, but there are communities who choose not to. So I'm not talking about taking away a holiday. We're talking about establishing a holiday in communities that may not want to do it in this manner. But my question is, I support what you're saying.
yeah,
I take offense to what you just made relevance to, but I support what you're saying. My point is, how do we translate that to getting folk to participate in the Veteran Day events? And I just don't know if giving them a day out can do it. But we can talk afterward, Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you. Representative Hickstone.
thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Ramsey is next. Are you through?
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. And I come from when I ask these questions, and come from a position of great respect. My great-grandfather was killed in the Battle of the Bulge. Both of my grandfathers served in World War II. My father served during Vietnam, and it was bred into me a respect for the service of our nation's veterans. But Representative Glanton made some very compelling points to me, and your goal ultimately, if I'm hearing you correctly, is to impress upon our young people respect for military service and veterans and patriotism. Is that fair?
No. With all due respect, our goal, we feel like our veterans ought to be honored by having the schools show the respect by making that a holiday. When I say the schools, if we have to do it through this, starting with this process, so be it. But how is it that this is a question we have all dealt with. But why are the veterans in our public schools looked over, but nobody else? The veterans. Now you can say, okay, well, you got the opportunity to come in, and we've talked about that on talk. But why do we have the other holidays that we have, but we can't honor the veterans in our public schools? Now, I would hope that the byproduct of having that holiday in communities like ours that do have Veterans Day events, where we get the youth involved, okay, that will help change that culture. That will, and that's a byproduct of that. But the culture, the change in the culture, and you don't want to hear what all I have to say about all that, but the culture that these kids see, when you take some of the towns in California, for instance, that don't want to have military recruiters on a public street, okay, the kids see that. You take a school just recently in California that did away with the junior ROTC. All the kids in that school see that. And they get to wondering, well, what in the world's wrong with wanting to serve your country? When you have college students, whenever recruiters show up on campus, and the college students who think they own these public university campuses run these recruiters off, and our college presidents don't go out there and run them off for doing it. We're breeding a culture that says you don't need to respect the military. It's not about trying in one day have a holiday for veterans at our schools and have the kids out and trying to do something about the cultural problems we have in getting our kids to recognize the value of our veterans. That one day is not going to do it. We want to do the two things. We want to get these schools where they're recognizing Veterans Day as a holiday, and they shut down. And then we'll go into these schools. I'll be glad to come back up here and sit down and suggest a program of education within the regular school year that will start teaching and not propaganda, stuff that's history, and they can start learning throughout the year. And I do believe when we send these kids out, in a lot of schools they send kids out to the community for projects for extra credit. Let them go to the Veterans Day and then come back the day after and write a paper and get 15 points on the grade point average or something.
Let me add something before you do that. There's a survey I have that shows that 10% of the kids participate in Veterans Day whenever they give an opportunity, as we're doing right now. I have a better experience down in my area because we have the Voice of Veterans, and most of them World War II and Korean. And we go out to the schools in about 5 counties, and they were very well accepted, and everybody likes it. The school superintendents like it. And I'm very much against closing schools because I just read a survey recently that due to the downturn in the economy, several states are starting to figure how they can do away with paid holidays because it's that important. And education is more important than anything else to me, and I don't think anybody can say they're more of a caring veteran than I am. And I think if you fought a war and so forth and been around the military, and there's 5 boys in my family were in the military, 4 in World War II and 3 in combat, and I just don't see it any other way than we need to. And I'll say this: when we have one of the strongest Veterans Day parade and so forth down in Griffin, and most of the people there, old guys that like me that can't hardly get around, and I could count on one hand the kids that are at that event, and they have the opportunity. That's at the end of the day, and I just say that what we're doing right now, this resolution. I don't know whether you've read this 523.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's worked pretty well, and I was really surprised. I guess that I think a couple of veterans down in St. Simon's got on Jerry, and he brought it. Excuse me, the majority leader, and he brought it up again. But and it hurt my feelings a little bit that two veterans wrote me up and chewed me out real good, and almost indicated I wasn't a citizen anymore, and said when he was fighting the war, he was thinking about coming home for a celebration on Veterans Day. And I said, man, they hadn't even invented it yet. How could you be thinking that way? I was thinking very different from that when I was in combat. So I think this thing's been twisted out of shape a little bit with what we're trying to do. Is a couple of people even saying you're doing away with Veterans Day, and that's the last thing anybody's thinking about. So I just want to say that from my standpoint. Let's see, who's next? Yes, thank you.
Sir, thank you for coming up. I have a number of veterans in my district. They've served on different levels of government. Most have seen war and the realities of it. Those who have been in leadership positions in the military have told me that to them that's the only place in this country where you really see a melting pot existing. And as I've been listening to this, I mean, I'm thinking we honor workers, we honor politicians, activists, sweethearts, Jesus, mom and dad, secretaries, religious faiths, on and on and on. And I'm sort of embarrassed personally that we could really have none of the above without the veterans, and that we have not done that. Until listening to you, I thought Veterans Day might be enough. But I agree that there's been a radical departure from what our children need to be learning, not advocating the military one way or the other, but those who have gone and offered the most precious thing anybody has to offer, and that's their lives. And also the families who are involved. Having said that, I'm wondering if, and if the committee would agree, if you would accept an amendment, or I guess I should have asked that to the author of the bill, that would expand it from Veterans Day to Veterans and Families Days.
And still it be a holiday in our schools?
Yes, sir.
That would be fine to me. To do that, you'd have to talk to Jerry. But let me say about the if I was the only veteran in this country, I wouldn't be up here asking for this. But because I am a veteran, and I served in combat, and it was a very hostile environment without being shot at. Vietnam was a very hostile place to just to breathe in, just to be in, and to be out in those elements, and then they have to worry about somebody shooting you or booby trap you, mortar you, put a rocket on you, and not that it matters about this bill, but I've been shot at. I've had mortars on me, booby traps. I had 152 artillery from the North Vietnamese. I've never had the rockets. Well, I did have rockets. The first night I was in July, they put rockets on us and scared me to death. And I was scared to the minute I left that country. Now, the reason I tell you this, I see what our veterans have gone to, and I understand what they're going through today, or rather our military people, to sacrifice and defend this country. And it's hard, they talk about a picture, 1,000 words, what have you. Well, it's hard to give you a picture or give you a news shot of our military folks over in Fallujah fighting for their lives. I mean, it just looks like a movie. And you don't, but those poor folks over there and riding those roads every day, worrying about getting blasted or you know where and back. You don't let down for a year or whatever your tour is. You don't let down, and when you come back, you probably never forget it. And
well, you know, and keeping my part short, I just want to convey to you that I guess I've learned something today I've never thought of before, and that is there not already being a Labor Day that provides for a school day being off. I've been under the assumption we've already been doing that. I'm sorry for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Let me read this resolution. Everybody has liked this resolution, and I cannot see. Pardon?
You want me to sit down?
If there's no, any other question? You have a question. I think I must. All right. This gentleman has. It's 14.
Thank you, Representative Everson here, 23-year retiree from the military, last assignment 82nd Airborne. A brother fought in Vietnam, 70% disabled now. Father was in World War II. I had 2 nephews to fight in Iraq, and I have a niece serving in Afghanistan now. I understand what you're bringing before us, and I appreciate your service to this nation. A couple of questions for you. Are there any other states in the Union wherein the schools are closed on Veterans Day?
I cannot answer that. We have not checked that, but I do not know.
Okay.
If there are.
You made reference to MLK Day, as you and I both know. That was a national holiday, and they required the schools to close on that national holiday. That was included in the legislation. I support veterans. I have a large contingency of veterans in my district. At this point in our state's educational history and where we are education-wise, the last thing I would like to see, if it comes to the floor of the House for a vote, I probably would support it, but with a lot of reservations. But the last thing I would like to see is students being taken out of school again for an additional day. As you and I both know, the state of Georgia has fallen to 49th when it comes to education. So we need to have those students in school as much as possible. No reflection upon Veterans Day or your request to have the schools closed on Veterans Day. I think we will be better served by having those schools open with the students in school on Veterans Day and incorporating some programs inside the schools, because I have attended Veterans Day services at my county, in Gwinnett County, every Veterans Day. I make it a point to go. And it's later on in the afternoon. And I can tell you, I can count on both hands the number of school-aged children that are there. And it's very, very disheartening to see how the lack of participation from those in the community when it comes to this day. So I applaud your efforts as far as getting people more involved in recognizing veterans, but I think we need to expand that discussion on how we can do that. And I just have serious reservation about closing the schools on that specific day for that.
I want to give my experiences in Luella Elementary School, which I consider one of the most patriotic schools in my district. I am booked up in case I still win office for the next several years to be there on Veterans Day. You could not hear a peep in that whole school. It was celebrated. So me and my 3 brothers are on the Wall of Honor there. And we had the lady come after me in VFW who cut Eisenhower's orders, Invasion of Europe, and it was a library day, and we participated with that, and they won a $10,000 award for being such an outstanding program. That wouldn't happen if the kids are out of school. They just wouldn't be there. So I'm just wondering why anybody would be against what we are following right now as a resolution. As Mr. Keene said, it didn't get past the Senate. Well, it didn't go to the Senate. It's a House resolution. It passed the House. I think it was unanimously, and didn't go to the governor because it's a House resolution. But it passed. But everybody in the House, including Mr. Keene. Mr. Keene's the second signer in here, and this was about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's just so great the way it says here. Veterans, whereas Veterans Day is celebrated throughout the nation every year to honor citizens who have served in the military, the men and women, we honor them, and it goes all the way down. And I'm just so overwhelmed with support in my counties where we celebrate it, and it wouldn't happen if the kids are home because they'd be skating and fishing and whatever they do. And this is my feeling on it, that I feel so strongly about it. And like he said, we're at the bottom already, and states are trying to do away with some holidays, and I just don't think we can afford another holiday out of the school systems. And it really takes nothing away because it's a national holiday. I don't get in the mail that day. Who's the next one? Mr.
Well, let me just say, just to clarify, I'm not against protest. People say I protest too much, but I'm not against the protest, and I'm against shutting people that don't want recruiters on campus, if that's the instance we're going to talk about, making it where they can't do the job they went out to do. And they can still protest that, but when they shut them down is what I'm getting at. And that. Yeah. Sure. Thank you.
Representative Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify a couple of things. First of all, I do appreciate your service, and I did not take your service for granted. And I want to say to you that I do understand what veterans go through. I, like Representative Everson over there, retired war veteran myself. Not only that, my wife served in the military. That's why I met her. My father has a metal plate in his head right now and a recipient of 3 Purple Hearts from Vietnam. And my daughter was almost killed by a mortar attack last year about this time. So I understand exactly what veterans go through as a veteran of 2 conflicts and a war. And I also support and promote and initiated the Army Junior ROTC in my district. So for me, sir, respectfully, this is not about recognizing, honoring, commemorating the service of veterans, including you and myself. This is about doing the most reasonable, logical, and I'm not saying what you're saying is illogical, I'm just saying that things I want students to know about your service, sir. I want them to celebrate your service, I want them to honor you and honor your service, and I want them to honor your family. because you deserve it. And the way that I see that we can get that done is that we put them in a captured audience and bring you in and let you tell the story. Let you walk into the history books and tell these children what it was really like. Again, I thank you for your service. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm holding up yeah, I guess the feeling is that unfortunately we ran too long over there and kind of ruined our time today, and I want everybody to be heard. And all right, you live kind of a long ways away. Can you come back? Or you? Okay. Okay. Well, let's let this gentleman speak because he can't come back, he said.
Thank you, Chairman Yates.
All right. Thank you. All right. This is Colonel Franklin Hart, and he's comes from Brunswick, Georgia, at St. Simons.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I have a slightly different take on this, which I think really needs to probably be addressed perhaps a little bit more succinctly, and that is that it's not necessarily that one day, being Veterans Day, is the only day that we go into school with their invitation to present a program. In our particular county, and I know the counties just to the north and south of us, in McIntyre and Camden, they really have, or McIntosh and Camden, they have similar programs. And what I really am interested in doing is just honoring the veteran. Lord knows they deserve their day. They have, well, Eisenhower is the one who changed from Armistice Day and made it Veterans Day. He kept it on the 11th for the significance of what the 11th was. Now, it's not nailed down to a Monday, which makes it very easy for the scheduling within academia. It is a floating day because they kept it on the 11th. What we do is we go into schools specifically during Veterans Week, which when the 11th falls. We have on the 11th itself a large parade. Both of the ROTC units, the Navy and the Marine, participate with their marching units and the band, and their students are lining the street. Now, that may be an isolated case from your experience as far as other counties are concerned, but we do educate our children, and I think that this is another way to do so. One of the things that we like to do is we like to let our veterans know that they, in fact, have a day which is being observed like other days are being observed, and that they have not been singled out to be the only national holiday occurring within the academic year that is not observed, which is currently the status right now. I ask you this: give the veterans their day. The veterans will educate the students. We will do it through parades. We will do it through school visitations. I have two daughters that are teachers. I'm known perhaps as well in their classrooms as they are. But don't ignore Veterans Day under the cloak of keeping it another day for education. Look at what I just passed out to you. It's rampant with holidays. Why Veterans Day is not observed is a question that I can't answer a lot of the veterans who ask me that. So, provide me an answer to that question. Allow Veterans Day to be celebrated as a holiday within the public school system. Let us educate and let you continue to educate, Mr. Chairman, in your area. We have as popular a response as you have, and I'm sure that there are other counties that will as well. So I really implore you correct what I consider an unfortunate oversight. Give the veterans their day. God knows they deserve it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative.
Thank you. I know Representative Ramsey has a motion, but with the chair's permission, I would like to just make a comment. Thank you for this. Thank you. I share my ignorance on this, and I should have done my homework, but I was not aware, and I thought I had it in mind, but I was not aware that on every national holiday, the schools are closed, except for Veterans Day. And to Representative Day's point, everything we are closing our schools for would not have been made possible if it were not for the veterans. So I think this is something we need to take a look at. Whether we take a vote on it today or not, we need to go back and do further research on it. I just wanted to make that comment.
Of course, you could take that point another way. We already got so many days off now. It's probably one reason we afforded 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Ramsey.
Yes, sir. You know, I'm looking at all these days off. I think what we're all doing here as members of the committee are struggling to find the appropriate way, the very best way to honor and recognize our veterans. And we all know I have children, and I'm not that old. It wasn't that long ago that I was in school. And I can tell you what I did on every single one of these holidays. It had nothing to do with recognizing what the purpose of the holiday was. It was about me getting out, riding my bike, goofing off, running around with my friends. I didn't think about Labor Day, what the purpose of Labor Day was. I thought about I'm not in school. Same thing on every single one of these holidays. So what I'm struggling with and what I'm wondering, do we want to, does it, in a way, minimize Veterans Day to lump them in with all these other holidays? If we're going to impose a mandate on our schools, is a better way to honor them by mandating, if we're going to impose a mandate, mandating some kind of curriculum on Veterans Day in our schools. So these kids do hear about the sacrifice. So I'm going to propose, if it's okay, I'd like to be recognized for a motion. What I'd like to do is make a motion that we lay this on the table so we can meet, we can talk, we can get together and just make sure this is the proper and best way to recognize and honor our veterans, because I want to get it right. So, Mr.
I'd say due to the late hour, I recognize you for that motion. Then moved and seconded. All in favor of laying on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One no. Two noes? Oh, I see. No. Okay, so it's laid on the table. It's my friend Mr. Harvey still here. Oh, let's see. And I guess Mr. Murray too. We got two here. Okay, Mr. Harvard, Representative Harvard. Yeah. All right. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank y'all for coming. All right. Maybe you didn't recognize that's the chairman of appropriation there. Okay. All right. We let you do that. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Sorry you had to wait so long.
That's okay. That's important issues. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here on House Bill 156. It is it's a simple bill. We have done this. We did this in the past with Superior Court judges and I believe probate judges, where those when they are called up for active duty, it just allows them to, if they are coming up for re-election, they can still seek office to re-election if they are current Superior Court judge. Well, this is just adding magistrate judges to that list. What brought this to the attention is our current chief magistrate judge, who just came in, is very involved in the reserves. He has spent a 14-month tour of duty in Iraq, and the thought was if he had to go back, it's not really his fault. He's been called up by the military, and should he be prohibited from seeking re-election because he's in Iraq. And this would fix that so that if he is called up, he will still be able to seek re-election. And quite simply, that's all we're doing is making sure that if he's called up for active duty, that it won't hurt him in his ability to seek re-election as our magistrate judge. Because we're very comfortable with him and we like him a lot, and this has a lot of support in our area.
So what do you visualize then, that the second man down, a second woman down?
And it's like most judges.
Yeah.
With the Superior Court judges, you have a lot of other judges that step in anyway. With a probate judge, you have a staff. And with magistrate judges, there are a lot of other magistrates and associate magistrates that can step in. And we'll do the job that he was doing. It's just make sure that he's not prohibited from seeking re-election just simply because he's off protecting and defending the country.
And we have a question from Representative Hextall. Any of the people have questions on this? It seems like a good bill to me. Do I have a motion? Have a motion, a second. All in favor? That's the way we do those two hands this time. All right, looks like it's unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
If Mr. Hextall is going to be a comedian, we're going to ask him to introduce the preacher next time. Okay. Recognize Representative Smyrie to present his bill, which is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I really enjoyed listening to the debate on the veterans bill as well. What I'd like to ask you all to do is on HR 259, just to give you a little background. After talking to the chair of the Rules Committee and some members of the Appropriations Committee, Lockheed is, of course, in a situation where they are in the process of having the F-22 program is facing a funding situation with the United States Congress, and in the next few weeks, during the defense appropriations, they're going to be deciding on the fate of the F-22 fighter program for Lockheed Martin Aeronautics, and they're trying to do as much as they can, get as much support as they can, to ask President Barack Obama and the defense to continue the funding of the F-22 program, which is about $12 billion to our nation's economy, and employs over 25,000 Americans, including 2,500 Georgians, and another 70,000 indirect jobs for subcontractors and suppliers. And what we're trying to do is send this as a letter to the members of Congress and to President Barack Obama, asking them to consider this. And the same type of resolution is being passed in the Senate, and hopefully we can ask for the uninterrupted production of the F-22 Raptor fighter, which is one of the planes being produced by Lockheed Martin. So the only thing we're doing is asking and the House of Representatives authorize and direct a copy of this to go to President Barack Obama and the members of Congress.
It sounds like an excellent idea. You want to make a motion? You're recognized. Second? All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? No.
Thank y'all very much.
Thanks, sir.
Not many committees are meeting right after adjournment today. That's a good
Sorry
committee.
you had to wait so long.
Oh no, that's all right. The veterans. My father served 26 years in the Army. My granddaddy served 32 in the old infantry, all black, 24th Infantry at Fort Benning, and that's a tough situation when you start talking about the school and these holidays. And I didn't see the list, but I can imagine it's pretty long. So it puts you in a very, very difficult spot when you're talking about schools and education and holidays. It's tough right now.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Look here. Stay.